You're listening to Cornerstone West Los Angeles.
Let's start. We'll read the passage on which the teaching is based. We're in 1 Corinthians chapter 13, and we'll read verses 1 through 7, so that's page 959 of the pew Bibles in front of you. It'll also be on the screen behind me, and as always, you can just listen. I think that's how they did it when it was written. Here's what Paul says. If I speak in the tongues of men and of angels, but have not love, I am a noisy gong or a clanging cymbal. And if I have prophetic powers and understand all mysteries and all knowledge, and if I have all faith so as to remove mountains, but have not love, I am nothing. If I give away all I have, and if I deliver up my body to be burned, but have not love, I gain nothing. Love is patient and kind. Love does not envy or boast. It is not arrogant or rude. It does not insist on its own way. It is not irritable or resentful. It does not rejoice at wrongdoing, but rejoices with the truth. Love bears all things, believes all things, hopes all things, endures all things. This is the word of the Lord. It's a famous passage. You've probably heard it before. It's famous for all the wrong reasons. You know this passage, maybe because it was read at weddings, where it's read and it's sort of like, love. And so we proceed to put it on coffee mugs and embroider it on things and sell them on Etsy, and typically look at it as this kind of sweet, sentimental passage that warms you up like hot chocolate on a snowy day. And so what Paul's doing in this passage is none of that. What Paul's doing is not encouraging us or comforting us with love, at least not in the beginning. Paul's confronting us with love. He says, you think you know what love is, but you don't know what love is. And until you're shocked by it, he says, until you're really shocked by the passage, the power of love won't really be set loose in your life at all. And so the very first thing we have to do, reading a passage like this, is get rid of the idea that it's sentimental and sweet. It's not sentimental, it's smelling salts. It's not sweet, it's shocking. It's not hot chocolate on a snowy day, it's the avalanche of snow coming at you. That's what this passage is. And when we get there, that actually opens the door. Because there are pain points in your life, there are pressure points, there are anxieties and struggles inside you and outside of you that this passage wants to upend and transform. But it can't do that if we're so busy being occupied by how sweet it is. And so what we have to do is to look at this and look at three things, there you go, Jen, three things that we think we understand about love, but we don't. Three things we think we know, but we don't. And that's, three things that make you think it's a snowy day, or hot chocolate, but it's actually the avalanche. Here's the avalanche: the importance of love, the nature of love, and the path to love. Importance, nature, and path. So first, the importance of love. Now, one of the reasons we don't see how shocking this passage is because it's almost always taken out of context and read, on a poster in the Christian bookstore. It's not, chapters 12 and 14 are nowhere to be seen. We just take this part right away. Now, it's as though we sort of think that Paul, was on a beach somewhere staring off into the ocean, and someone came along and said, Paul, what is love? And Paul just said, love, took out his little quill. Love is patient, and begins to write this thing. That's not what's happening. There's a chapter before and a chapter after, and each of these words that Paul uses in verses 4 and following, you can find those words earlier in the book as things the Corinthians were doing wrong. This is a rebuking passage. And so when you begin to see that, you begin to see that the problem for the Corinthians, for this church here, is they don't understand the importance of love, but they think they're fine. They don't understand its importance, but they think that's okay. I mean, of course it's important, but not really, but they think that's fine. Now, if you've been with us, you know some of this. If you're new, let me kind of catch you up. So the city of Corinth was not dissimilar to Los Angeles. It was a place of a lot of commerce, a lot of success, a lot of art and culture and industry. And if you came to Corinth, you came almost always to make something of yourself, to become a success, to make it. Which means that Corinth was a place filled with a disproportionately high amount of achievers. People who climb the ladder, high capacity people who get things done, smart, savvy, successful people, a disproportionate amount. Now, when that kind of city has the gospel come into it, and some of those people become Christians, what's going to happen? Well, one of the most instantaneous, insidious temptations, one of the kind of first inclinations that's going to happen in a church like that is to view Christianity as just one more thing to achieve at, one more thing to succeed. And so what happened in this church, that's what this church is. It's a church full of people who are doing exactly what they did in their careers, exactly what they did in their social lives, and they're doing it in their spiritual lives. And what does that produce? Well, it produces the same thing it produces in the office and in the social circle. It produces, a ton of production along with a lot of division and competition. A ton of efficiency along with a lot of envy. And what's more, if just in the last chapter, these people aren't just sort of naturally talented, naturally achievers, naturally high capacity. They're supernaturally gifted. There are miraculous gifts that are happening in this church. There's manifestations of the Spirit happening in this place in Corinth, and that's just feeding the issue of jockeying for status and success and spiritual achievement. So for them, love is important the way icing is important on a cake. Love is important the way a frame is important on a painting. Love is important the way a positive work environment is important at the office, which is to say, it's great as long as there's a cake and a painting and you're getting work done. And what does Paul say? Now, Paul does not say, without love, your achievements are less. He says, without love, they are nothing. He takes, this is verses 1 through 3. Clanging gong, noisy cymbal. He takes the highest, most glorious, visible things you can imagine from just about every area of life. He says, look, you can captivate a room with your words. You can speak in the tongues of angels. You can know everything. You can have full command of mysteries into which most people can't even see. You can see all the connections. Are you religious? You can have this amazing gift of faith. You can command nature with your faith. Are you moral? You can lay down your own life for a cause. Are you committed? You can lay your life down. Are you generous? You can sell everything you have to the poor. Everything, not some, all. And without love, that's not good, but could be better. It's nothing. And here's the lesson. This is the importance of love. Love is not important because without it, we are incomplete. Love is important because without it, we are nothing. So you think you know the importance of love, and so do I. But then Paul comes along and says, no, you don't. We think, of course, if you have all these great things and you don't have love, it will be far more ineffective than it could be. Of course, love would really take this to the next level. But Paul says, no, it would be nothing. It transforms something into nothing. If you remove love, you're left with nothing. It's just dust. You remove love, you remove anything and everything that would have been significant about the things you're doing in your life. And you render it totally and completely worthless, he says. We think if you have not love, you gain less than you could have gained. Paul says you gain nothing. We think if you have not love, you're less than you could be. Paul says you are nothing. This is the importance of love. It's the only important thing. Now, let's apply this for a moment. We have tons of people who are visiting every week, and you're looking at Christianity, you're thinking about Christianity, and what you tend to be, again, meeting people over the years, you tend to be people who are living decent lives. You come along and you're trying to be good people, decent people, kind people, and it's hard work to try and live a good life. But for the most part, you look around and you go, with a few failings here and there, I feel like I'm doing okay at being like a good person. And Paul comes in here and just jackhammers up the entire foundation you're building your life on. He says you can be amazingly moral, amazingly successful, amazingly committed, amazingly religious, and still not be loving. And that makes every good thing you've ever done turn out to be nothing at all. It vanishes like smoke when you let the passage do this to you. But for the real audience for this is not you who are here visiting, looking, examining Christianity. The real audience is me. The real audience is the achieving Christians in the room, the religious people in the room. That's who Paul's writing to here, especially those Christians who do a lot of things. We have plenty of achievers here in the room, and some of you don't think you're achievers just because of the high level of achievement around you. Like, not me, yes, you. You too, you're just here. And Paul here, what's the temptation of people who are religious achievers, who want to get things done, be spiritually productive? The temptation is that we confuse skill with spirituality. The temptation is that we evaluate ourselves on results and not on love. The Corinthians are saying, look at these spiritual gifts. We must be okay. And Paul is saying, you cannot evaluate your life that way. Now look, I'm a preacher because when I was in 7th grade, they asked me to give a testimony to a bunch of middle schoolers, and my testimony was too boring, to me at least. There's no car crashes whatsoever. And so I decided, well, I should just talk about God for 10 minutes. And you know what they said? That was good. That was helpful. Now, they were just being nice, but, felt kind of good. And I realized I might have helped some people. And, this is the thing. When I get up and talk, I do it in large groups, I do it in small groups, do it one-on-one. When I explain something, usually people learn something. And often they tell me about that. They say, hey, that was really great. I like learning things, and you helped me learn something. But you know what I found for years and years and years is I can be having just the worst week. I can be proud and bitter and resentful. I could not have prayed really substantially all week, and I can get up and I can open my mouth and start talking. You know what someone's going to come up afterwards and say to me? You really helped me learn today, Brian. It was really great. Thank you for giving such a good message. And what am I tempted to do right there? What happens? Well, I must be okay. I mean, God's using me. I must be fine. Look, something must be good about my spiritual situation. Now, look, you're a counselor. You're an author. You're a writer. You're a musician. You're a good friend. You know a lot about the Bible. And so every time you talk to someone about Scripture, every time you sit down with a good friend, you're the kind of person where they say afterwards, man, that really helped me get through a tough time. And it just kind of keeps happening and keeps happening and keeps happening. And yet, the whole time you're proud and you're bitter and you don't have a prayer life to speak of. But what do you say? I must be doing okay. Something must be going spiritually right. Because look, isn't God using this? You're confusing results for love. You're confusing skill for spirituality. I think a lot of us are evaluating our life based on our spiritual achievements, our spiritual activities, but not on love. And Paul says, no. Love is the only important thing. Without it, all those other things vanish into the wind. They're nothing. Now look, just as a by the way to the Christians here, what is the gospel? It's that God loved us before we achieved, isn't it? Isn't that what we believe? Isn't that what we kind of center ourselves around here? Isn't that the center of all the things that we love about Jesus Christ and what brings us together? Every time you evaluate yourself on your spiritual achievements, on your spiritual activities, every time you think your spirituality rises and falls, not with the love you show and receive from God, but with the things you do, every time you do that, moment by moment, you are preaching to your own heart the gospel's a lie. Every time. We can't do it. We can't do it. Love is the most important thing. It's the only thing that matters is receiving love from Christ and giving it to others. It's the only thing that makes anything significant is love. And just, look, one more, we have to move on just for a moment. Do you see the hope this gives, though? Just for a moment. Some of you in here, you look around, you think there are some pretty gifted people here. There's people who really can teach, people who really can, be musicians, people who really can counsel, who really know a lot. They're authors and writers and leaders and all these things. And you think to yourself, I'm not like that. And you just kind of sigh and you go, I guess that's not my lot. That's not what I'm going to be doing here in the church. Do you understand that the most significant thing, the only truly significant thing in the Christian life is open to absolutely everyone in the room? That you can excel at the only significant thing in the Christian life, regardless of your skill set, giftings, talents, that you could be the most loving person in all of Cornerstone Church without having to have any skills, any talents, anything that puts you up in front of people or makes a big splash in the world. What makes a difference in the world? What makes a difference in the lives of people? What makes a difference in the church? What makes a difference in society? What does the Bible say? They'll know you by your love. Abide in my love. Love one another. A new commandment I give you. Love one another. Do you think the gifts make the difference and you're shut out because you don't have enough of them? No. There's no limit on love. There's no velvet rope to let people in to love. There's only all of us together. Anyone in the room can excel at love. That's the importance of love. But do you see the hope in it? But that's the importance of love. It's the only thing that actually matters. So what is it? The nature of love. Now, everyone thinks they know love until they see it. I think it, and you think it, and now we got to see it. I mean, you go around and you take the poll, and everyone has different ideas about this. Some people think of love as an idea with no reality. This is the person at work who just kind of goes around and goes, why is life worth living without love? And then they stab a coworker in the back for a promotion. It's all idea. There's no reality. Some people, it's a feeling with no stability. It's this deep, deep, visceral feeling towards others that comes and goes. It's never stable. For other people, it's all behavior with no heart. Love is duty. Love is doing things the right way. I am loving because I need to be loving. And I will go and love you with the checklist of love that I have been provided. Now, Paul comes along. All those people think they know what love's like. They don't know. You and I think we know what love's like. We don't know. Paul says, let me introduce you to love. It's not just an idea, it's a reality. It's not just a feeling, it has stability. It's not just behavior, it reaches all the way down into your heart. Love is bigger than you think it is. Even right now, no matter how much you studied this passage, no matter how much I have, it's bigger than we think. And Paul says, let me introduce you to love. What's the nature of love? Now look, Jonathan Edwards, one of the intellectual giants of the 19th century, Jonathan Edwards put together one of his most famous volumes on this passage, mainly verses 4 through 7, and it's 360 pages long. It's 15 sermons. So all that to say, we're not going to get to all this today. But let me see if I can't get our arms around it a little bit. What's the nature of love? Let me give it to you in some propositions. First, love is a choice. Now, every one of these words not everyone, a lot of them are translated like adjectives, patience, kindness, that sort of thing. Love is patient, love is kind. Those are adjectives. But in the original language, everything here is a kind of verb. And if you remember, back in the good old days of DC Talk, they taught us love is a verb. That's such a deep, I love that like 2% of you understand what I'm talking about. I'm sorry, I have to do it. It's 90s Christian culture and I have to hold on tightly to it. They spelled it L-U-V, so who knows if we can trust them, but they said it. But that's essentially what's going on here. Love is a verb. And what that means then is love is the kind of thing that you choose. The first thing you learn is that love is a choice. And that goes against how we're naturally inclined to understand love, because we almost always think of love as a drawing force, like a magnetic force. Love is something we are drawn towards, not something we choose. We enter a room, you and I do it both, we always do it. You look for the people who will bring the most into your life, and you're drawn towards them. They'll bring the most in their conversation, in their attractiveness, in their status, but we're constantly entering rooms and entering relationships and giving our love. We're drawn in love towards the people in that room who will bring us the most pleasure, the most joy, the most whatever you want. But the problem with that is it means you're never choosing to love people. You're only drawn towards your desires as they show up in other people. And what happens when those things you desire stop showing up in those people? Or, more dramatically, what happens when the things other people desire in you stop showing up in you? My kids ask me all the time a very strange question, which is, Daddy, why do you love me? Which is okay. Because I say it a bunch, I kind of say it all the time. I got 5 of them, so I'm constantly saying it. And why do you say that all the time? When a kid rolls their eyes and asks why you love them, it's a very strange thing to process for a parent. But what do you say? Do you say, I love you because you're cute? Well, they're going to grow up and get pimples. Yeah, do you say, I love you because you're smart? They're going to come home with a failing test. Like, what do you say? The only thing you can say is, I love you because I love you. It's not just this flippant choice, but it's something deep inside. I love you because I love you. That's the only way this works. Without that, it's not really love for them. It's love for something they do for me. The only answer is, I love you because I love you. Love is a choice, and that makes it anchored and stable. Is that how you understand love? Love says, I love you because I love you to everyone around. That's the approach to everyone. That's love. Love's a choice. Love's also a reaction. Some of the first words Paul uses are about how you react to other people Patience, kindness, not being irritable, resentful. Now, these are words that don't show up when things are easy. This is not a word when there's no temptation. This is a word, every one of them, when something goes wrong. Like, how do you react when people go wrong, when they violate your expectations and your desires? How do you react? Now, in the Greek world, where Paul's writing, it was a virtue to make sure people who failed you paid for it. Aristotle wrote, the truly virtuous person would refuse to tolerate any insult, any injury, and always be ready to strike back at any hurt. That's a virtue there. So in other words, you're supposed to kind of be like a porcupine. The needles lay flat most of the time, but then when they get, frustrated, up they go. And in the same way, you're supposed to be nice until people fail you, and then you impale them. That's the idea. And so we read these words, and we think, patience. We really should wait longer before we impale somebody. That's what we think. And that's not what this says. These words indicate not the same reaction, just nicer about it, but a fundamentally different reaction to what happens around you in the world. Patience literally means suffering long suffering. When you're wronged, you don't react in retaliation. Even when you have the right to get back at somebody and make them pay for what they did, you don't. That's what patience means. Kindness adds to it. If patience is not reacting in that kind of vengeance, retaliation, kindness looks to actually bless those who fail you. Instead of reacting by making them pay, you react by reaching out to bless even when they don't deserve it. Patience and kindness. Later on, you see resentment. Literally, that means holding a record of wrongs. Some of us have a playlist in our minds. You're very nice people on the outside. But we have a playlist in our minds of all the times people have failed us. And we can run those back and replay them over and over again whenever we want to. And we can bring them out to bear on those people's lives at the drop of a hat. That's resentment. That's bitterness. It's not love, Paul says. It also says in verse 6, love doesn't rejoice at wrongdoing, but with the truth. Now, what this means is that when someone else's sins are exposed, when someone else is shown to be not so great, when evil is done to someone else or their own evil is exposed, we don't get any satisfaction from it. Love takes no joy in that. There's no internal sort of, that's too bad, but they had it coming. There's none of that. Love only ever rejoices with the truth. Here meaning what's right and good in everyone's life. Now, is that how you understand love? Love doesn't seek to punish people, either aggressively or passive-aggressively. Love doesn't hold on to bitterness from the past. It torches the playlist. It extends grace in the present. Love is about reactions. Love is also, here's another one, about others. You say, that's obvious. Well, look how many times Paul makes sure you know that. Love doesn't envy, doesn't boast, not arrogant, not rude, doesn't insist on its own way. Those are all ways of saying something we think we already know, that love is actually about other people, not you. So why repeat it so often? Well, because Paul understands that it's very easy for us to think we're loving others when we're only loving ourselves. He said it in verse 1 through 3, right? You can die for God and not love God. You can give your money to all of your stuff to the poor and not love the poor. How is that possible? Charles Spurgeon had this story. He said there's a king in his court, giant kingdom. Farmer comes in, who farms on the king's land, and he says, King, I have this giant carrot, my prize carrot. He grows carrots. And I love you so much. I want to give you this carrot as a token of my love and thanksgiving for all you've done for me. And the king takes the carrot and says, this is an amazing carrot, and your love for me and your generosity are so amazing. And I want to give you 5 more acres of land to farm on because look at what you're doing with all this farming you're doing. I want to give you more. So everyone goes away happy. The king's happy. The farmer is just rejoicing. And then this nobleman's over on the side looking over at this going, okay, so you get 5 acres for a carrot. Nobleman raises horses. Next day he comes in with a big old horse right down the court. And he comes to the king and he says, my lord, my liege, thank you so much for the stables you've given me to raise these horses. I bring you my prized horse because I love you so much. And he gives the reins to the king, and the king just looks at him and says, thank you, and goes back to what he was doing. And the nobleman just kind of jaws on the floor, and the king looks back and he says, oh, I see. You're confused. Here's what happened. The farmer gave me the carrot, but you're giving yourself the horse. I'm why do you do the things you do? Why do I do the things I do? So often, it seems like love, but it's really about receiving. It's getting things with others as a conduit to those things becoming ours. You can give your time, your money, your decisions, but not actually be loving people because all you're doing is using them to get something that you want at the end of the day. And that's how you end up with envy and bitterness and arrogance and pride. You're not looking to love, you're looking to receive. You're looking to receive in a tricky way, but it's still looking to receive. However you look on the outside, you can be insisting on your own way. You're willing to be rude. In other words, it's being indecent, like socially underhanded to get some status or some good feelings for yourself. You tell that joke. You cut someone down a peg, a cutting remark here or there. When you can't get what you want, it becomes envy. I deserve it. I'm fixated on it. Why do they get it when I don't? And you can't stop thinking about it. When you get it, and this was the most fascinating one to me, you become arrogant and you boast. Because just having it isn't working. It's not giving you what you want. We don't boast because we have awesome things. If those things were so satisfying, you wouldn't have to boast about them. We boast because our awesome things aren't working. So all the good things about you aren't giving you what you want, so you have to find a way to squeeze more out of them. So I'll boast about it. I'll get puffed up about it. Someone will see. They'll compliment me. That will get me what I really need. So we need to boast. We need to get arrogant. Just having them isn't working. But love is actually about others, not you getting what you want. And so in love, social interactions don't all revolve around you and what you need. Love celebrates the successes of others, even in the midst of your own failures. Love, when the congratulations aren't there and the approval isn't there, you don't really get upset because love is actually about the other people who are benefiting from what you're doing. Love is actually about others. One more. Love is total. Love is comprehensive. Now, these words Paul uses, they go outside and they go inside. They cover the entirety of your person. When you lose your patience, it's something people can see, but you can be deeply envious and no one can see it. When you're irritable, people can see it, but you can be resentful and no one can know. No one can see it. Love is not something you just do with your heart, but not your life. Love is not something you do with just your life, but not your heart. We think we know that, but how often are we trying to look patient while we're seething inside? Or flip it around. How often can you have really kind feelings, really good intentions for other people, but not come through when it counts? It's not wrong to be as patient as you can be, but in love, there is total integrity between heart and life. It's the whole person. It's total, it's comprehensive, but not just with you. It's total and comprehensive in every direction, in every situation. This is verse 7. Love bears all things, believes all things, hopes all things, endures all things. All. It's total. It never stops. It never gives up. It never picks its moment. It's always in every direction. So love is not just some of your friends, but all of them, all of the time. It's not just some moments, key moments, but all the time, every moment is this love. Love is not just a gesture. It's a genuine orientation of the depths of your being all the way out to the tips of your fingers. It's total, everywhere, always, and that love is the only thing that matters. Without that love, everything in your life vanishes. So this is love. It's just staggeringly beautiful. Imagine a world where we treated each other this way. It's enough to bring a tear to your eye. It's staggeringly beautiful. But it's also dangerous, isn't it? It's shocking. This is the avalanche. This is the shock. This is why if you read it at weddings and you understand it, it will haunt you the rest of your life. Because it's so shocking. It's so far off from us. And so the passage really undoes you if you take it seriously. How much of your love isn't love, I'm the preacher, You're the preacher. You realize how much of your preaching is about how well it will go. Even when you're preaching on love, how good it will feel, if people will learn something, if they'll be blessed by it. Because of them? No, because you want to be someone who blesses people. You want to be someone who's engaging. You want to be someone who helps. It's important for you to be a helper. You guys are a wonderful conduit for me to learn I'm a helpful person. You're wonderful for that. How much of my love for my congregation isn't love? You're a parent. Look at your parenting. How much of your love for your kids isn't love? You're a spouse. How much of your love for your spouse isn't love? You're a friend. How much of your love for your friends isn't love? How much of your love for your family isn't love? How much of your love for your city isn't love? How much of your life that you thought was love isn't love? So you know you're getting it when you start looking around and going, I can't do it. I need a miracle for this. The Corinthians are fixated on these supernatural miracles happening in their midst. And Paul's point here is love is a bigger miracle than that. We need a bigger miracle than this. You realize you thought you could live a good life. You thought you could live like a Christian life without ever needing God to make contact, you know? You'd be your own miracle. You'd never need God for it so long as you did the right things. You know, what gets you? What's the path for this? What's the path to love? Okay, well, what you thought before was it was about trying harder. It's clearly not about trying harder. You read the list. I read the passage in the beginning, right? I read the passage, and you thought to yourself, you know, okay, well, the bar is raised. Time to get to work. I should really work harder on these things. Well, that's to miss everything we've seen so far. What's the path to this? You know, look at how he's putting this. He's not defining love. He's describing it. He's not saying, to be loving, you need to be patient and kind. The definition of love includes not being arrogant. No, he's saying love is patient. The commentators look at this. They say he's personifying love. It's like he's looking at love and describing it. Why does he put it this way? Well, you know, one way to think about it is this. You only ever really experience love personally. You only ever learn to love by being loved. Like, not by lists. Definitions are helpful. Lists are great. But when you think about what it means to love someone, you don't think of a list. You think of a person who's loved you. That's what always happens. And it's true of you right now. It's true of you when you were born. Studies have shown you, everyone's born looking for a face looking back at them. Everyone's born looking for someone looking back, someone that's going to be that love in your life when you're the most vulnerable, when you have the least to offer, the person that's going to draw you close and keep you close. And if you don't get that, if you don't have that love enter your life, typically in the form of a parent, you will struggle to love for the rest of your life. You can't love unless you meet love, unless love enters your life not as a list, but as a person. You have to be loved into love. That's the path to love. So where do you find it? No parent's going to give you this. No parent's going to bear all things, endure all things. No spouse, no friend. Even the best of them, they die. No, where do you find this? Well, Paul's showing us. Paul says, I know a better one. He's not just showing us a list. You know what they say? They say that Paul is looking at Christ like a painter looks at someone sitting for a portrait and just putting brushstroke after brushstroke on the canvas. That's what this passage is. He's looking at Christ and he's saying, Father, forgive them. They know not what they do. Patience and kindness. He's saying, I've come for the sick, not for the healthy. I draw close to those who are wounded. I get close to those no one else will touch. He chooses. He removes our sins from us as far as the east is from the west. There is no record of wrong. He's just painting Jesus over and over and over again. Even the last one, bears all things, hopes all things, believes all things, endures all things. Jesus did this kind of audacious thing with his disciples where he would look at them and he said at one point, don't fear those who can kill the body. Fear those who can cast both body and soul into hell, which is just a pretty audacious thing to say to people who are going to go off and die some of the most painful early deaths in human history. Limb from limb, thrown to lions. These are the disciples. These are the early church. Now, he says all this. How do you say all that to these people? What he's saying is even for them, he says, even that is nothing compared to the judgment of God. It's nothing. And then he goes on, and on the cross, he takes that judgment, an infinity of judgment for you and for me. And people come by and they say, why is he staying on there? Isn't he, supposed to be God in the flesh? Isn't he supposed to be the Messiah? Isn't he supposed to be the king? Can't he just come down? Why does he? They were right. Why did he stay? Love stays. He stayed because right at that moment he was bearing all things, enduring all things, hoping all things, believing all things. You have to be loved into loving. You have to meet love and be loved into loving. You will never love that way unless you are loved by him into someone who can really love others. So what do you do? How do you leave with this? That's the path. You got to be loved by someone. Now, here's how. I know I got to be quick. You have two eyes for a reason. The whole field of vision only works when you have these two. One eye sees, I can see you from one angle now. I can see you from a different angle now. You put those together, I got a whole field of vision. You need both, two angles on the same thing. The same is true in this passage. You got to have both eyes open. One eye sees this passage, and all it sees is you failing at love. The other eye sees this passage. It sees a portrait of Jesus loving you the way that he loves, and that's how you got to live. If you want to move from one to the other in real life, you got to have both eyes open to this passage. You need to live your days with both eyes open. We came into the room, we had both eyes shut. Even me in some ways. You come into the room with both eyes shut. Love is sentiment, love is sweet. I know what it is, but I don't know what it is, and that's fine. Now we got one eye open. And you see your own failures. You see the shock, you see the avalanche, but you got to have the other eye open. And at the exact same time, see Christ while you are nothing. While your life and all your achievements evaporate in front of you like dust because there's no love in them. While that's happening, he is yet loving you, believing, enduring, bearing, hoping. And so this week, when someone is frustrating you, and you don't want to be patient or kind, you got to have both eyes open. You can't you can't have them both closed. You can't rationalize and say, well, it's normal to be frustrated by someone so frustrating. It's a natural reaction. No, get one eye open. Look at the passage and let it cut you. Let it bury you in the avalanche. Let it show you how little love you have. But then you have to get the other eye open. Christ is loving you, being patient with you, even in that moment that you're not being patient with somebody else. And that means that this passage, this week, can simultaneously bring you to your knees in shame for how little love is in your life. At the exact same moment, bring you to your knees in worship for how much Christ loves you anyway. And if you let it do that, if you let it shock you for what you lack and shock you for what you have in Christ, it's going to transform you. He's going to transform you because he loves you. This is a portrait. He's a person. And if you let him, if you look to him, he will by the Spirit come in and he will melt your heart and reform you. And he will let you be more patient and more kind and less arrogant and less boasting and less envious. And you will become someone slowly looking like him. And you will bear all things, believe all things, hope all things, endure all things. Your love will never fail as he goes to work in you with both eyes open. So let's keep our eyes open this week. Let's pray. Lord, give us grace to see what you have for us here and help us to have our eyes open. We're thankful for this love that starts with you and then molds and transforms us. Help us keep that order right. And let us behold the height, the breadth, the depth, and a love that surpasses understanding so that we might become it in our own lives by your power, we pray. In Jesus' name, amen.
Thank you for listening to Cornerstone West Los Angeles. For more information, please visit us on the web at cornerstonewla.org.